Right, a bunch of people have joined, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to the October 29th SIG Multicluster call. First up on the agenda today we have Arthur.
Hello. Yes, so I wanted to continue a bit the discussion we had last meeting about label and annotation, and also, report back on the change that we have been discussing on the despair offline, and if everyone was in line with this. So, as a reminder, or for those that were not in the meeting, last meeting. So this is about synchronizing label annotation down to the service import and potentially down to the DRI services if the implementation is using DRI services. And so we discovered two things while discussing online. First is that if the implementation is not using DRI services, this reduces a lot the usefulness of this. So for instance, Tom and Stephen, which are maintaining a Submariner, said so. So the action plan to that was to mark it as optional for implementation. And the second point was that after a bit of research, there is some very widely used tool that add labels and annotation that we don't want to sync. The example that I put in the meeting note were Argo CD that had the labels and kubectl that had an annotation. So kubectl is for the last applied annotation. Argo CD is for marking in which application is deploying these resources. And for instance, in Gateway API, you may potentially pass down those labels and annotation, but in case of MCS API, you want to sync those across multiple clusters. So this is an easy conflict. Because label annotations should probably be an exact match to avoid conflict, and because labels are more free-form, basically you can put anything, not only like a prefix like my supercontroller.io/something. It seems to me that we should be having the label annotation in the spec, so not on meta, so we prevent this problem entirely of tools that adding label and annotation automatically. So yeah, that was the report from offline discussion. And I wanted to know if everyone was in line with that, and if we could have a discussion, if not, or also feel free to comment on the PR after the meeting. Yeah, that was me.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so Court asks if you were presenting something, but there wasn't anything. Oh yeah, I haven't enabled screen sharing, sorry. There we go. Yeah, and it was, right, so there's the link in the agenda anyway. So I'm not sure if anybody has any opinions on this that hasn't been participating in the discussion on the PR.
I'll just say thanks for the update. And yeah, I see the distinction here about the benefit to derive services, but the lowering of the benefit, I guess, when that's not the assumed implementation.
I guess my question here is, what next steps are you seeking? Are you seeking like feedback? Are you trying to move forward with this given what you discovered?
Well, I mean, I guess if everyone agrees with the version, we should probably go forward, yeah. And I'm hoping to get it before we release the beta version, hopefully. Because for at least for Cilium, it would be a really nice feature. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess that was the clarification. Is like with some of what you discovered, like, is this still something that you're interested in that would be valuable?
I mean, for instance, if some people think that this is not okay to have optional features, we can come back. We can come back on it. I don't know. And if someone discover another way that would not be hard to do about label annotation, that would be different, or maybe naming. I put a bit random name in there. It's like exported annotation and exported labels, I think, directly in the spec. So yeah, any feedback, and then we should go forward with it, hopefully, if everyone agrees.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, I'll try to take a closer look.
And also, I guess maybe it could be reflected to Alpha 2 if
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to deal with that. Depends on the
Yeah.
timing, I guess.
Yeah, if we merge this PR before Alpha 2, then it'll be part of Alpha 2, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so essentially, anybody who feels concerned, who would like to have a chance to say something about this, now's the time to look at the PR and leave comments. Otherwise, I'll review it again. But if it gets an LGTM and then my approval, it will go in. So you might not have much time to react. And yeah, we probably given. All right, Jack.
React. I was just going to say after you're done, Arthur, do you want to actually do the implementation? Or does someone else want to sign up for that?
It's like in the it's not directly in MCS API repo. It's like each implementation doing their things.
See, this just amends the reference. Cool. I'm kind of coming into this as a tourist, so apologies.
Well, yeah, it changes the keps README. So, just the documentation currently, but it would have to change the service export CRD as well.
Yeah. So yeah, it would be a change to the
That was my
API
naive
spec.
observation. Yeah. So I was just wondering if that's true, who wants to sign up for that? I mean, I'd be happy to do that.
I can work with Arthur on that. I already have the pending stuff that I need to motivate myself to prioritize finishing.
Cool. Sounds great, Mike.
Cool. Yep. And yeah, I don't think we have any concerns with the proposal. Mostly just trying to understand if it may be of use to us as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you use derived services by any chance?
We're currently exploring an MCS implementation on Istio. So looking at implementation details, don't have final decisions on what that architecture might look like yet. But definitely curious to hear like any challenges that you're hitting and what like you're finding for implementation so that we could like work together to do stuff like this, like evolve the spec if needed.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll write up I'll add to the notes that Mike and Arthur will work together to take care of the CRDs. This last call for reviews. Okay, so with that, I think we can move on to the next item. Seeing the raised hands. So Keith with an interesting sounding topic: MCS and unroutable endpoints using gateways.
I'm Keith. I work with Mike on Istio, and as Mike just mentioned, we're looking at some patterns putting together design for supporting MCS and Istio, specifically ambient mode. And one of the use cases that's really important to us is the fact that not every cluster is going to have routable endpoints from every client. There are going to be some cases where maybe each cluster is running on an overlay network for their pod IPs, and they're therefore inaccessible from the outside. They might be deployed in different virtual networks and within a cloud provider, or different subnets in on-prem environments. And so one of the common patterns for doing this and making this work from an infrastructure perspective is you make a public gateway, you make that gateway routable, that single IP address, and then all traffic kind of flows through. And that's the approach that we take in Istio. We've got two clusters that aren't routable from each other. The gateway's on each one, and all traffic goes through that gateway in order to get to the backend endpoints. This is obviously sort of a something that's not really addressed in the CAP. I've got a way that I'm looking to potentially solve it, at least within the context of Istio, where within each cluster-specific endpoint slice, we would put the IP address of the east-west gateway, and then the controller that is handling and programming things, doing routing, will be able to look at that east-west gateway and send traffic to that destination. There have been some sort of follow-up questions about, okay, well, how do we get some level of weighting to work properly? Do we need to add a weight per cluster in the endpoint slice? Do we need to publish the number of endpoints so that Kube proxy or some controller or whatever else can kind of have a makeshift weighting system if we don't do something less explicit? And we're exploring those options now. But I guess my question to this group is on that general question of sort of a next hop gateway architecture when endpoints aren't routable, is putting that gateway IP address in the endpoint slice acceptable? Is this something that there's maybe interest in codifying and addressing more inside the KEP? Yeah, I'll stop there and see if folks have questions or comments to add.
Laura, go for it.
Hi, yeah. I'm super interested in this. Cool. And yeah, just a couple initial thoughts. I think I think the idea that there's like a hop in between in the information that one cluster knows versus the next one, like I think that is okay, or like kind of like expected and has been like discussed a little bit about being like in this type of situation. Certainly from the perspective, I feel, of like the cluster IP service already, like what the cluster set IP is for a given cluster, like it doesn't need to be the same for every cluster. Like whatever's routing in between is like cool. So like that one's definitely like whatever, headless. And then what you're talking about with like needing to be able to wait and stuff, that's, as you know, where it like gets kind of weird. I do think we probably need to describe something special about like where or how to expect that to be handled. I think in the sense that like today the KEP is very like hands off, like, and you have this DNS record and it can get there, haha. And like on the one hand, that like covers everything, so it's fine. But on the other hand, you don't have a very like specific answer to like how are we going to like implement this. And even I think for the existing MCS implementations that are interested in more like something more like intelligent regarding like round robin or different types of weighting, like even just internally to the MCS implementation has been discussed, kind of gets like kind of stuck about like what's the right way or the standard way to do this. So anyways, This isn't giving you straight answers, but I just want to validate the problem, and I'm really interested in this. And I do think this is an area that's ripe for either like figuring out where that definition is in this spec, where it is in the gateway spec, where we want to keep dancing that line of like, this isn't like in the standard, but we need something a little softer or optional or whatever about like how this really needs to proceed so that these things can work together. So yeah, those are my first thoughts.
And I guess most of that touched on kind of the weighting conversation. I know the first half of that was around like east-west gateways as being like one possible implementation for endpoint slices. And that was something that I think I had talks with folks here about like 2 years ago when I was looking at Consul's potential implementation of this and having a similar objective. And I think I recall that it's not explicitly spelled out in the CAP, but it's something that was certainly an intended potential architecture. Is that accurate still?
Yeah, I feel that's accurate.
Yeah, I would say so too. Well, so just Keith, when you're one of Mike's comments there made me wonder, when you're talking about gateways, are you just talking about the general networking concept or specifically gateway API gateways?
The general networking concept.
Yeah,
So
general
like
networking
our
concept.
implementation is going to be probably a gateway API gateway, but this could be a load balancer. It's just whatever the next hop needs to be to get into that context of the remote cluster.
Yeah.
That's the general abstraction that we're looking at. You add in an extra hop, an extra abstraction, and that's going to allow you to get through. And the scenario in the CAP don't exactly describe that, but it sounds like that's a fairly accepted use case here,
Yeah.
where you can still have like a single VIP for the service import, and then have different backend IPs per cluster. So I think
Yeah.
I'm good on that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's
here it
so
is.
Submariner, for example, supports that. But it doesn't hide the target IP completely. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. I think the endpoint slices, they still have the target IP address, and things are handled using routing tables and IP tables rules or OVN flows. But there is the concept of without the MCS controller, this IP address wouldn't be reachable, and the MCS controller does networking magic that makes this thing reachable in the remote cluster.
Gotcha. Yeah, in particular for our implementation, like I'm hoping to find a way where we can completely sort of hide the backend IPs, just because there is a cost to that from a controller perspective. The more things that you add into your cluster set, you've got to deal with these highly churning endpoint slices. So if we could have a fairly stable one with just a cluster VIP, with just a virtual IP for a set of east-west gateways, that would be huge for our scale, right? So it doesn't sound like there's a lot of objection there. I'll get some thoughts together. I'm still in the design phase of the potential implementation. Once I think through the space of the what's what I'm looking for, of the weighting, to think through the weighting space a little bit more, I can maybe write something up and submit it for discussion in a future meeting. It sounds like there are folks who are interested in that particular problem space.
Yeah, so like Mike said, especially the weighting side of things, that's something that we've sort of skirted around for several years. There was some discussion with SIG Network at one point about extending topology, but that wasn't really deemed appropriate at the time. And we sort of waved it aside by saying there's nothing in the CAP objects that supports it, but implementations are free to add their own way of choosing target endpoints. Yeah, but it would be good to have something shared if we can come up with something acceptable to everybody.
Yeah, that sounds good. Definitely interested in potentially working on something like that would be broadly applicable. Even if it's just like implementation specific guidance. And yeah, I think trying to like thread the needle between two potential different use cases. Like the one is like opaque waiting, where you're addressing a single thing and then something intelligent happens, like maybe one cluster has more capacity or stronger hardware or more endpoints or whatever available, and that takes more of the traffic instead of just like round robin between them. Or the other one, which is probably the more controversial one, is closer to like the headless service thing. And that's where you start to get into the fuzziness of, we don't want to treat one cluster as more special, but maybe we need to do something for locality, even if we do still want to enforce that the service is logically the same.
Especially because the spec explicitly disallows cluster-specific routing.
Yeah.
Even for headless services, something there to be able to express some level of intent around how much traffic goes to a particular subset of endpoints, whether that's cluster-based, whether that is availability zone-based, is very very useful, just because there's no other lever for those sorts of declarative configurations. So yeah, I'd love to have some follow-up conversations about this as we continue to flesh out our design. That's all from my end. If nobody has any more questions, appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. Right, I don't see any raised hands, so Martin, it's your turn.
Oh yeah, I put it down for Ryan actually. I don't know if Ryan, you want to present it. It's like Ryan's got a PR. Let's talk about Ryan's PR. That's my intro.
Sure.
Thanks.
How can I let me see, where's the
Here's
share? Oh, share here. Let me find the- Okay, I think I'm sharing the right screen. Yeah. So we had multiple discussions in the last month or so. So we consulted the SIG chairs, auth chairs, API machinery chairs. So we made and we have some offline discussions with all the stakeholders, most of them at least. So according to our discussion, I made some changes to that credential cap. The high level idea is because last time there's all the SIG chairs and experts, and we kind of understand that putting the secret into the API isn't the best practice for any security experts, or from whatever perspective you look at. So that but we on the other side, most of the projects in the open source do look for a secret, some type of credential when they are in this multi-cluster mode. Name it Istio, Argo CD, Q, multi-Q, all of them does something similar. You need to put a credential into the primary cluster, hub cluster, or managed cluster, whatever you call it. It's the way. So given that fact, what we trying to do is just instead of putting that into API, we give it a prescriptive description in the cap. So here's what we basically, the high level idea was, okay, we understand you still need to access the class and clusters. And here are the 3 ways we think is possible. We recommend 2 ways, and the last resort is if you have to do that, like things what you are doing now, we still provide you a way, but that way is not through the API. We just give you a like convention. And for the recommended way is one is we have work API. It's in our SIG, so we definitely didn't put enough. We didn't promote that enough, so I think that is definitely a good synergy there. We could say we recommend you to use work API. It's in the SIG, and we also could use more help to make the work API finish up that work API, make it more standard. Second way is you can use push model with some identity. Yeah, other common sense solution. And this is our recommended way, right? You use some kind of identity federation so that you can have one ID or principal, whatever you call it, and it's federated identity so that it have access to your entire fleet or your whatever you call it, to entire this cluster inventory, so that you could use that identity and to access. And that is out of scope of this cap, right? The identity part is you would have found your way to do this federation. And the third one is, as some comments says, it's kind of the not recommended way is if you have to do that, we give you a way to access the secret. The secrets are still basically it's the same as what we put into the API. It's just instead of it's in the API, it's more like a cap, like describe it. That the same thing. We will put a secret into a namespace that belongs to that consumer. And those secrets will have labels. The namespace will have labels so that we can have RBAC access control based on those labels. And that there's a cloud provider, there's a cluster manager that is responsible for that. And how those secrets magically appear there is not part of this cap. We might be, as we discussed in the last call, I think, we might start another cap on how does this magic happens. Basically, the consumers somehow needs to register with the cluster manager, telling them, who am I, what do I need, what are the basic credentials or RBACs I need on those clusters, what cluster I need. And there are other things we haven't spelled out yet, but those are not part of this cap. We only, in this cap, we only say that if you need that, use some magic in or maybe you can use some multi-cluster manager proprietary ways to do that. And when that is done, if the cluster manager implement this cap, they should put the secrets into those namespaces. How that is done is not spelled out in this cap. Actually, it was never spelled out in this cap, but it was kind of spelled out in the API. But now it's not even in the API. It's just a convention that you must so the secret must reside in those namespace, and the namespace must have some labels. Secrets must have those labels. Label is the cluster profile object name, and the cluster manager must ensure that each secret contains access. So basically, it's only for one single customer. You don't want to generate the secret or credential to share between consumers. Those are the basically the guiding principles for those cluster manager who's going to implement this cap. Yeah, that's kind of the high level idea. That's it. Any questions? There's some minor comments. Yeah, we can put. I can address those comments. Like, should we just say this is not recommended? Yeah, we probably can do that. Not recommended.
Yeah, overall it looks good to me. I think that conveys what we're mostly doing already, or envisioning of doing.
One more thing, I don't know how many of us here are going to KubeCon. If we see, probably we can have because the next step for me is to start to define for this part is this cap is not complete yet, although we've already spent 2 years on that. The meaty part is actually the properties. So I would like to see if we can get it together to have some high level and stretch out some of the core properties, standard properties, and extension, whatever you can think of. Then this cluster profile object will be interesting, like really going to be useful when other consumers start to integrate with it. So that's something I think some face-to-face time or some gathering might be good. If not, we can do offline. There is a I don't know if I think I pinned Stefan. There is a some kind of SIG meetings, not just our SIG, like all the SIG meetings in in Utah sometime next during the KubeCon. I plan to be there. That's the first time I've been to those SIG meetings. I don't know who else is going.
Yeah,
gonna-
I think the like SIG meet and greet session, it's going to be a little bit different this time. It's going to be hopefully of more visibility. So it's intended to basically give attendees at the conference a chance to like meet the SIGs and get involved and kind of start conversations there. And I believe this time it's going to be Thursday at the at the CNCF project pavilion area. So instead of like a separate distant room that's difficult to find, it should be more accessible to attendees. So I'm going to plan to be there as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Last time I only realized that it happened when I saw people afterwards with the SIG badges.
Yep. Yep. It's yeah. In the past years, it's been kind of difficult to find in like just away in a room tucked away.
Yeah. I will get this. I'll address those comments today, and yeah, if you have any other questions, please let me know.
Is one of the next step we should have to define registration or not really?
Yeah, I think I would like to, because this whole story from the beginning is that we're missing this registration part. Yeah, that's also, but that's a different cap, right? It's not in this one.
Yeah. That and
definitely-
properties would be their own cap likely, right? Or I
Yeah.
guess property could be part of the cluster profile too, but
It's more like in the cluster inventory. Cluster inventory doesn't mean just one cluster profile. So it's still in colors in the cluster inventory project, but it could be a different CRD. I don't know if it doesn't need a different cap. It will be a different CRD or some kind of API.
I don't even know if it needs to be a CRD. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah, it may not be a CRD actually. It may not be a CRD, but it will be under the same project, the cluster inventory project. So currently, cluster inventory has this cluster profile CRD, but we could have some kind of API. May not be a CRD. Yeah, that works too.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, the same way that MCS has service import, service export, the like namespace sameness policy. Yeah, you can absolutely do something like that in a separate cap follow-up.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention, I'm open sourcing some little tools to convert cluster profile to Argo CD config. I don't know if I mentioned that before. It leverages something some folks here at Google really like, compositions. Basically, it's a controller. It's a CRD-based controller, so you can just write templates and not having to write a full-on controller, which is pretty cool. And that allows me to transfer cluster profiles. So if you have a cluster manager that writes them, it automatically converts them to Argo CD secrets for now. And you could easily add more conversions like multi-queue and the others we've been talking about. So that's something I'm playing with. I'm starting with Argo because it's the most obvious, but I think I'll do multi-queue next. And I'll keep adding to those, but I can share the links if you're all interested.
And you're going to demo that in the KubeCon, right?
Yes. Oh, I didn't want to spoil the surprise. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's great. That's really exciting. Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing that.
No. Yeah, and as for composition, the folks from the team will try to like mention it more. The SIGs, I think I talked to one of the guy that writes it, is like they want to really share it. It's a really cool little tool. They're originally doing for KCC stuff, which is Terraform as Kubernetes resources, but it applies really if you have a CRD, you can like convert that CRD to a bunch of other resources. It's freaking cool. Not having to write a controller was awesome. Mike, you were going to say something. Sorry, I interrupted.
No. So I just want to understand a little bit about this tool. It's not Argo CD specific, right? Not Argo specific, right? Oh.
No, basically it's a template that converts a cluster profile into whatever cluster list you already have existing. So when you can't afford to modify the cluster list, like that multi-cluster application that you already got, and it leverages a secret or it leverages some other CRD and you need to generate them. I'm saying always start from cluster profile because that's going to be our entry point, and then we'll then you can write that little conversion from the cluster profile to whatever specific thing you have.
Okay. I'm just wondering, is it possible to contribute to the Argo community with this tool, but maybe a little bit more Argo
Going
specific?
native, yeah, you're right. Going native would be the much better path. Especially Argo is actually pluggable. So for Argo, technically you could go and write an Argo plugin that properly reads cluster profile, and that's definitely the better path. It'll be ultimately better to support. I'm cheap and dirty, and so I went just being like doing that little Jinja conversion. And I think there's just a little proof that we can do that. And if you want to support things that already exist and especially don't support plugins, that might be a good viable path. But it's true that if there is, by default, if you're writing a new application, go straight to the cluster profile. Don't bother with this conversion. And if it's pluggable, maybe use the pluggability to plug into cluster profile. Yeah, it was a thought experiment because I want to be able to like support a list of them. So I feel this approach is rinse and repeat potentially.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, that's the end of the agenda. So the next scheduled call would take place during KubeCon, so it won't happen. Well, look forward to seeing a few of you at least at KubeCon. And then the next call a month or so from now. But please review the PRs that we've discussed. And have a good rest of the week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Have a good one.